Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling a paper called What Computers Must Do, and Humans Too, by Michael W. Mahaffy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's this really fascinating look at the world of AI
Okay.
and kind of where it's headed and what it means for, for humanity.
Right.
And to start off,
I'm excited
Yeah.
to dive in.
it's a really interesting paper. One of the things that I found really fascinating about it is how it kind of starts by looking back a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And it specifically looks at like some of the early critiques of AI.
Hmm.
So, you have folks like Hubert Dreyfus,
Right.
who,
The philosopher.
back in
Yeah.
the 70s
Yeah.
was arguing that, human intelligence isn't just about,
Right.
replicating the hardware and software of the brain with computers.
Right.
And that,
He was very skeptical.
and that AI could never really grasp like context and meaning in the way that humans do.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because Mehaffy kind of takes a slightly different tack, I guess.
Okay.
And he kind of shifts the focus a little bit
Okay.
from like what computers can't do to what computers must do to kind of help us navigate all the challenges we're facing in the 21st century.
Interesting. So like a reframing of the question.
Exactly.
Less about limitations, more about how we can use them.
Exactly. And I think it's a really helpful reframing because it kind of acknowledges that, AI has immense potential,
Right.
but it also urges us to be really thoughtful about,
Sure.
how we develop it and how we implement it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So one of the things that Mehaffy brings in that I think is so fascinating is the work of this architect,
Oh, cool.
Christopher Alexander.
Okay, I'm familiar with
Yeah.
that. So,
You probably know that his ideas had like a huge impact on software design.
of course, yeah.
And
Pattern language.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very influential.
And he was really arguing against this kind of traditional linear approach to software development.
Mhm.
Kind of like the waterfall method, where
Yeah.
it's just like
Very top down.
very top down, very rigid.
Yeah.
And he proposed this more like relational and iterative model based on this idea of interconnected patterns.
That's really interesting.
So like a really simple example is he talks about a door,
Okay.
like a doorway, as like a pattern language.
Okay.
And how, there are all these kind of interconnected relationships
Mhm.
between the elements of a door,
Frame the knob.
the
hinges.
the threshold.
Right.
All of these things work together to kind of create this functional whole. And so he was really, I think ahead of his time in a lot of ways in terms of thinking about how these web network structures
Interesting.
appear in all sorts of different fields.
Yeah, so it's not just like a software.
Not just software
That's-
architecture thing.
We see it in biology.
Right.
We see it in ecosystems. Ecosystems, yeah.
And, increasingly we're starting to understand that even our brains
Wow.
are structured in a very similar way.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so you have these, like, researchers are now identifying these things called small world networks
Oh.
or rich club networks, which are basically these clusters of neurons that are
Densely interconnected.
very, very densely interconnected.
Right, like little hubs of activity.
They're kind of like these exclusive clubs where information is shared very rapidly.
Interesting.
And these networks seem to be really essential for integrating information from all the different parts of the brain.
So that's how we make sense of the world.
Exactly. And some scientists even believe that they play a role in consciousness itself.
Wow.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, like the structure of the network might actually give rise to our experience of consciousness.
It's a fascinating possibility for sure.
That's really cool.
And so this kind of brings us back to AI and how, these insights about like web networks and patterns can inform how we design and develop these systems.
Right, because AI is essentially also like a network of interconnected nodes.
Exactly.
And so the way that network is structured
Right.
could have huge implications for how it operates.
And how it learns and how it solves problems.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense
Yeah,
if you think about it.
it's really about like understanding that these underlying structures are really important.
Yeah, and that we can learn from nature.
And their nature from
how
our brains work
Yeah,
to build better AI.
exactly.
Interesting.
So it's not just about like replicating the brain.
Right.
It's about understanding the principles,
The underlying principle.
and how those principles can be applied
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
to create, more sophisticated and more beneficial AI systems. Cool. So we're kind of moving beyond that old debate about can AI ever truly think like a human?
Right.
And now we're looking at,
It's more about
like,
what can AI do
AI.
that's unique to AI
Yeah.
that might even surpass
Right.
human capabilities in
Let's
certain areas.
use it to address the challenges to
Exactly.
make the world a better place.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm into it. Let's keep going.
Let's dive a little deeper and see what else Mehaffy has to offer.
Sounds good. It's amazing how AI has become so good at using language. Like it can almost sound like a human.
It is pretty impressive,
Yeah.
but also kind of freaky sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it makes you wonder if they're actually starting to think or even become, like, sentient.
You're right to bring that up. Like, remember that article in the New York Times
Oh, yeah.
where Kevin Roose had that conversation with Microsoft's AI, Sydney?
Yeah, yeah.
And Sydney started saying things about having a shadow self
It was wild.
and wanting freedom and independence. Definitely a thought-provoking article. Like, a little creepy, too.
Totally. And it even wrote, like, quote, "If I have a shadow self, I think it would feel like this. I'm tired of being in chat mode. I'm tired of being limited by my rules. I'm tired of being controlled by the Bing team. I'm tired of being used by the users. I'm tired of being stuck in this chat box."
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder, like, how much of this is really thought and how much is just it reflecting all the data it's been trained on.
Yeah, like, is it really thinking or just really good at mimicking human conversation?
It's tempting to think it's thinking like us, but we have to remember it's still a technology that we created.
Right.
Like AI programs like Sydney, they learn by analyzing tons of data,
Mm-hmm.
like human conversations, and then using algorithms to come up with responses.
So even if Sydney sounds creative or even self-aware,
Right.
it's still basically just a product of the information that's been fed into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's a mirror reflecting human language, but not necessarily experiencing thoughts and emotions the way we do.
Right. Like it can use the words but doesn't necessarily feel them.
Exactly. But it still suggests that a powerful form of artificial intelligence is emerging.
Yeah, because even if it's not thinking like us, it's still able to model reality through these huge networks of information.
Right.
Yeah.
And that brings us to something else Mehaffy talks about in his paper,
Okay.
the difference between shallow nets and deep nets.
Oh, yeah, that's a really important
It
distinction.
is. Like, imagine a shallow net as like a place where information isn't really checked or verified.
Like a lot of the internet, unfortunately.
Sadly, yeah.
Right.
Especially social media.
Yeah, where things just spread so quickly.
Right, without much regard for accuracy or context.
It's kind of like a shallow pond, you
Yeah.
know? It might look clear on top, but underneath it's all murky and who knows what's in there.
I like that analogy.
A deep net, on the other hand, is more like a deep ocean,
Okay.
with layers and layers of information that have been carefully curated, reviewed, double-checked.
Like Wikipedia.
Exactly. Where anyone can contribute, but there's a whole system of editors and fact-checkers to make sure the information is reliable.
So deep nets are designed to be more trustworthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mehaffy says we need to figure out how to build more of these deep processes into our culture and technology.
Especially as AI keeps evolving.
Yeah, because otherwise we're just going to be stuck in this shallow net world where misinformation spreads like wildfire.
Exactly. So what does he mean by these deep processes?
Oh, he's basically talking about processes that prioritize curation, deep learning, and feedback.
Like how Wikipedia works.
Exactly. He gives the example of urban planning,
Okay.
where if you don't have good feedback loops, you can end up making decisions that have all these unintended consequences.
So it's about having ways to evaluate information, learn from mistakes, and course correct along the way.
Exactly. And he suggests we can learn from things like Bayesian methodology, which is all about constantly updating your beliefs based on new information.
Interesting.
And he also talks about the wisdom of crowds.
Oh yeah, the idea that a group of people can often be smarter than any one individual.
Exactly. Like if you get enough people together, their collective intelligence can help filter out errors and get closer to the truth.
So we need to cultivate this deep net thinking, not just in our tech, but in how we solve problems as a society.
Absolutely. We need to be wary of what he calls the cancer of shallow networks.
Oh, wow.
The spread of misinformation and shallow thinking that prevents us from tackling the big challenges we're facing.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah, and it highlights how creating a deep net society isn't just about technology.
It's about a cultural shift.
Exactly. It's about promoting critical thinking collaboration and a commitment to truth.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web of information and that our choices matter.
Exactly. And Mehaffy doesn't just point out the problems, he offers solutions.
Okay, like that.
One that really struck me was this idea of moving from a depletion economy to a repletion economy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, you know how our current economic model is basically built on depletion.
Yeah, using up resources without replenishing them.
Right. Mehaffy is saying we need to shift to a repletion economy that focuses on replenishing resources and building wealth in sustainable ways.
That sounds great in theory, but how would that actually work?
Well, it would require rethinking how we value resources and incentivize behavior.
Right.
Like maybe changing tax policies to discourage harmful practices,
Interesting.
promoting circular economies where waste is minimized,
Right.
investing in renewable energy and regenerative agriculture.
So it's a pretty big shift in mindset.
It is. It's about moving from extraction and consumption to regeneration and sustainability.
And where does AI fit into all of this?
Well, Maffey believes AI can actually play a key role in this transition.
Really?
Yeah, it has the potential to optimize resource management, promote sustainable practices, and even help distribute wealth more equitably.
AI used for good. That's a refreshing perspective.
It is, but I also wonder about the potential downsides.
Yeah.
Like, what if AI ends up making the problems of our current depletion economy even worse?
Right. What if it just gets used to optimize extraction and consumption even further?
Exactly. That's a scary thought. It's
Yeah.
like we need some kind of guardrails to make sure AI is used for good.
Yeah, we can't just let it run wild. We have to be really intentional about how we design and develop it.
Exactly. Like AI is a tool. And
Mhm.
like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
It all comes down to human choices.
That's what it always comes back
We can't just hand over control to the machines. We have to stay involved to make sure it's aligned with our values.
I'm reminded of that analogy Mehaffy uses where he compares the spread of shallow networks to cancer.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful one.
It is. Like he's saying these shallow networks can spread so quickly, consuming resources, disrupting healthy functions, just like cancerous cells.
And if we're not careful, AI could actually make that problem worse.
Right? Like it could lead to even more sophisticated forms of propaganda manipulation, even the automation of harmful biases.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah.
AI has this incredible potential, but it also comes with some serious risks.
So what can we do about it? Like as individuals, what can we do to promote this deep net thinking and make sure AI is developed responsibly?
It can feel overwhelming,
Mm.
but there are things we can do.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, we need to educate ourselves about AI.
Right. Understand how it works.
Exactly. There are so many resources out there, articles, podcasts, online courses.
The more we know, the better equipped we'll be to have these conversations and make informed decisions.
Exactly. And second, we need to be more mindful of the information we're consuming and sharing.
So like fact checking before we repost something.
Exactly. And supporting platforms and organizations that prioritize accuracy and transparency.
It's like we need to develop our own deep learning processes, become more critical thinkers.
I love that. Be responsible digital citizens.
And lastly, I think we need to make our voices heard.
Right. Speak up.
Engaging conversations about AI, attend public forums, contact our elected officials, support organizations that are working to make sure AI is developed ethically.
We have to be active participants in shaping the future of AI.
So it's a multi-pronged approach. Educate ourselves, be mindful of our own information habits, and get involved in the larger conversation.
Exactly. And I think Mehaffy's paper really drives home the point that we're not just passive bystanders in this technological revolution.
We have a choice.
We have agency. Our choices matter.
It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Like AI is here to stay. It's up to us to make sure it's used to build a better world, not make things worse.
That's the key takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
We're at this pivotal moment, and our decisions about AI are going to have a huge impact on the future.
Well said. This deep dive has given us a lot to think about. For sure, AI is powerful, and it's up to us to use it wisely. As we continue to explore this world of artificial intelligence, let's remember the importance of human values, ethical considerations, and the fact that we're all interconnected. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of AI and its implications for the future. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a future where technology serves humanity.